People wildly overcomplicate fat loss phases to the point it looks more like a surgical procedure than it does losing a few pounds. So I sat down to create a 60-day fat loss guide. Then I thought, well, instead of just making the guide, why don't I actually do the 60 days and document the process? We're going to be looking at specific apps, workouts, meals, and processes I used. Part 1. Assign your non-negotiables. Whenever I start something new, I try to start by setting myself non-negotiables. These are things that if all else fails, I must try my absolute best to uphold these tasks. They should be relatively simple and can be as specific or as broad as you see fit. Just be aware that too specific may feel impossible to stick with, and then too broad may feel pointless and too easy. I like to make it easy by simply having an action and a frequency. For example, I will walk 30 minutes 4 times per week. I recommend keeping these to the absolute essentials that you believe are the key elements in you either succeeding or failing your goal. The more you add in, the more likely it is that you're going to skip out on a few. I recommend between 2 and 4. You should also keep a log of how consistent you are with your non-negotiables by using something like a habit tracker. Part 2, design your environment. Your environment plays a critical role in your daily habits. Creating an environment that works for you as opposed to against you is a great way to skyrocket those good habits. For example, imagine if your toothbrush wasn't on your bathroom sink and instead was locked in a safe. You'd be far less likely to remember to brush your teeth every morning. So then we look at our non-negotiables and think, how can we create an environment that reinforces those habits? If you'd like to weigh yourself every day, place your scales where you brush your teeth. If you'd like to run more, place your running shoes at the front door. If you'd like to eat more fruit, place fruit in bowls around your house. The purpose of designing your environment is to remove friction. The more friction a desired action takes, the less likely you're going to execute. Step 3, set a date. If you're planning on moving into a prolonged fat loss phase, you must set a date where you plan to either stop or take a break. You cannot expect to diet for the rest of your life. Think about the times you have a holiday booked. The motivation to drop a few pounds is through the roof. This is because you have a date, a set point in time that you know you have to stick it out till. You must also make that date known constantly. You can set a reminder on your phone, you can put a sticky note on the fridge. Have that date in your mind at all times. If it is a fat loss phase, I wouldn't recommend going much further than 8 weeks. Once you've chosen that time frame, you now need to break it up into chunks. For example, after 2 weeks, I'll review my progress and see what is and isn't working. That way, it's only 4 2-week blocks, which is a lot more mentally manageable. Step 4. The plan. We want to make the process as easy as possible, like laughably easy, starting with the most important part, a calorie goal. There are a ton of calculators that you can input your information and it will spit out a target calorie goal. If that's a bit of you, I'll leave a calculator in the description. However, what I always do is base my calories on how my body weight is fluctuating. We ideally want to be eating as many calories as we can while still consistently seeing your body weight come down. This way, we can stay sufficiently fueled to limit a decrease in performance. With that being said, if you'd like to go a little bit more aggressive and reduce those calories by 200-300, then that is an option too. So use the calculator to establish a baseline and then monitor your progress week by week, which leads us onto our next most important step, tracking. Now I know people hate on tracking, but I would argue that a poor relationship with food and the number on the scale doesn't come from over-awareness, it comes from under-awareness, which can be easily remedied by tracking. The number on the scale, whether it be food or body weight, provides you with valuable information that you can use to your advantage. Imagine trying to track your spending habits, but you don't have access to your bank account. It would be a nightmare. But here's what and how I recommend tracking. First, try and get a daily calorie measurement. This is the biggest factor that's going to affect your progress. You can obviously do it without tracking, but it will be considerably harder to make changes if you're not making progress. Make sure your calorie tracking app is visible on your phone at all times. I'd also recommend taking a body weight measurement either 3, 5, or 7 times per week. Ideally at the same time of day. You can then compare the sets of results each week and determine if you're actually making progress. If your weight isn't moving down, then just decrease your calories by 100 per week. If it's moving too slow, reduce further, but be aware the further you go, the harder it is to maintain. I'll show examples of this later on in the video. Next, I'd recommend setting up a habit tracker. Add in all the habits you're trying to get done and allow it to send you daily notifications. Again, I'll show what I use later on in the video. Now that we've got our calories sorted and our systems for tracking, we're going to be looking at food. What I'm not going to recommend is that you go looking for loads of new recipes. Instead, what I'm going to recommend is you look at your current diet and see where you can make changes to accommodate for your new calorie goal. Can you increase the amount of protein in a meal? Can you reduce the calories of a meal by replacing something with something else? What are the things that you absolutely don't want to sacrifice? If there's a meal that isn't perfect but is good enough and works for you, you should absolutely keep that in your diet no matter what. People often change their entire diets to these unrealistic meals that they make for 1 week and then never make again. You should instead look at the meals you already make and just see how you can make improvement. For example, if you have cereal in the morning, you could swap 60 grams of cereal for 30 grams of cereal plus 200 grams of Greek yogurt. That way you're still getting the food you enjoy, plus you've just added 20 grams of protein. These examples are endless, so I encourage you to go away and look at your diet to see where you can implement either higher protein or lower calories. On the subject of protein, a general recommendation is between 1.8 and 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. This, alongside with a minor calorie reduction and strength training, will ensure that we maintain as much muscle mass as possible and maybe even build some. Step 5. Create accountability. Finally, once we've gotten our entire process laid out, we need a method of staying accountable. There are a bunch of ways we could do this, through getting your friends and family involved, posting on social media, even hiring a coach. Whatever method you choose, it's vital that you find some form of accountability, or at the very least, you should try and identify your true values and rationale behind losing some body fat. As often when you understand this at its true core, it is enough to spur motivation on its own. I have a full video talking about this, which will be linked up here. Now we've looked at the framework, we're going to be looking at the specific things I did over the last 60 days to drop body fat consistently. So my non-negotiables for the 60-day fat loss phase were: number 1, track intake daily regardless of the situation. Number 2, drink 2 liters of water per day. Number 3, at least a 45-minute walk every day. And number 4, a minimum of 4 resistance training sessions per week. I've chosen these 4 because I believe if I was to meet these as a bare minimum, I'd be well on track to achieving my goal over the 60 days. To stay accountable, I downloaded a habit tracker that allowed me to record how consistent I was with these habits. The tracker gave me daily notifications as a reminder to input information to times that I set. The specific app I used is just called Habit Tracker. Here are all the little changes I made to make sure I had the best environment for change. Number 1 is I created a layout on my phone that would encourage me not to forget to log food or my daily habits. Basically stored all apps away in separate files, created widgets for my food and tracking apps. Number 2 was just packing my gym bag every night so I was ready for the next day. Number 3 was I placed my food scales in the cupboard underneath where I prepare food, and I placed my weighing scales where I have my morning coffee at work every single morning. And number 4 was I told my colleagues, my friends, and my family about the fat loss phase to drive up those accountability levels. To make a list of your own, think about what you would like to do more of. Then think about the friction that is stopping you doing that thing more often, and look at the possible changes you could make to remove that friction. This could be to take a different route home from work that passes your gym, or change gyms to a closer location. Now we're going to look at the processes of the last 60 days in more detail. So first off, I started by taking a daily body weight measurement. As soon as possible in the morning, I'd simply step on the scales and write it down in the notes on my phone. Because of the environment I created, I was 100% consistent with this over the 60 days. The reason I'm such a massive advocate for this during a fat loss phase is because A, it allows you to see how your body weight fluctuates day to day and removes that negative feeling of stepping on the scales. And B, it gives me a pretty decent idea of how my body's responding to the amount of calories I'm eating, and I can make changes on the fly. On top of that, I was tracking calories every single day, and I was close to 100% consistent. In week 1, this ended up being 90.4 kg and 2,221 calories. Going into week 2, I kept the calories the same, so week 2 came in at 89.3 kg and 2,215 calories. This was a great sign that the amount of calories I was eating was adequate enough for me to see consistent fat loss. So next week, I trialed a small 100 calorie decrease to 2,100 calories, and weight stayed similar at 89.9 kg. But instead of panicking and just aimlessly reducing calories, I stayed the same, averaging 2,025 per day, and dropped to a further 88.8 kg. A sign to trust the process and not put your foot too hard down on the gas when things aren't moving the right way. From there until the end of the 60 days, I stuck at around 2,050 to 2,100 calories, and you can see from the graph where my body weight moved to. You can also see that I took a weekly progress picture as well as a video. This was simply to get a better understanding of how my body was actually changing. I'd hugely advise this for yourself. Now, as for food, I like to keep it extremely simple by only eating really 1 or 2 different meals for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, Monday to Friday, and then changing up over the weekend. For breakfast, I generally alternated between protein oats and Greek yogurt and honey. For lunch, I pretty much always go for a tuna salad sandwich, high protein, high volume, and not too bad in calories. This also gives me the chance to talk about changes that I made mid-phase. When I reduced my calories by 100, I simply swapped from full fat to low fat mayo. When I reduced further, I simply swapped 2 slices of bread for a white wrap. Remember when I said we want to make it easy? It really can be as easy as that. For dinner, again, I alternated between chicken and rice variations and spaghetti bolognese. And finally, for training, I stuck to a 5-day approach with 0 cardio. The split was simply a push, pull legs, upper, then lower. If you'd like to know what the exercises were, they're on screen now. And that's a wrap. If you want me to go deeper on anything I spoke about today, just let me know. I kind of wanted it to be less about me and more about the educational aspect. Drop a like and a subscription to the channel and let me know your thoughts in the comments.